Can ZTE's prepaid budget phablet compare with Samsung's Galaxy Note 3? Let's find out. I'm Taylor Martin, this is Pocket Now, and this is the Boost Max versus the Samsung Galaxy Note 3. The Galaxy Note 3 is considered by many to be the king of the extra-large smartphone space. Competitors have all tried their hand at making so-called phablets, and few have truly stood a chance when compared to Samsung's oversized superphone. But practically everyone to date has tried to beat Samsung at its own game, packing the best of the best into a slim, trim, lightweight package, then slapping a premium price tag on it. ZTE, while breaking into the US smartphone market, aims to change that. Enter the Boost Max on Boost Mobile. We're here to see if the Boost Max is a worthy phablet contender. Can the Boost Max be to the Note 3 what the Moto G is to the Moto X? Or does price make all the difference in the oversized category? Let's find out as the Boost Max and Galaxy Note 3 go head to head. We don't need to harp on the hardware and design of these two phones too much. The Galaxy Note 3, like most Samsung devices, is made almost entirely of lightweight plastics, but this particular model was the first handset with the faux leather backing and stitching that we've now seen take over Samsung's product line of late. The chrome-like plastic trim, odd navigation button configuration, and the S Pen, which tucks into the lower right corner of the device, all come together to make a top-tier phone. The Boost Max does a decent job of mimicking that top-tier look and feel, while still being made mostly of plastic. But let's be clear, there is a significant difference in the level of finish of these two phones. The Galaxy Note 3 feels premium and rigid. The Boost Max may not be flimsy, but it feels hollow, and it just doesn't feel as premium as the Note. It's visibly cheaper, though when you factor in the price, ZTE deserves some commemoration for making a device of this caliber and selling it for so cheap. An unfortunate side effect of cutting costs to keep price down, however, is visible in the physical footprint of these devices. The Note 3 is considerably smaller in every dimension despite featuring the same display size. It's 8mm shorter, 2.1mm narrower, 1.1mm thinner, and 33.3 grams lighter. And that makes the Note 3 markedly easier to wield and use. The story grows a little more bleak when we take a look at the bits and pieces which come together to make these phones. And if you get down to the nitty-gritty, the differences in cost and, likewise, price are apparent throughout. The Galaxy Note 3 is widely accepted as having some of the best specifications on the market. A gorgeous 5.7-inch 1080p Super AMOLED display, 3GB of RAM, 32 or 64GB of fixed storage, and, of course, the monster Snapdragon 800 chipset, with the quad-core Crate 400 CPU clocked at 2.3 GHz. The specs of the Boost Max are more in line with those of the Moto G than its phablet counterparts. It only comes with 1GB of RAM and 8GB of fixed storage, and it's fitted with a Snapdragon 400 SoC. The CPU is dual-core and clocked at 1.2 GHz. The two phones do share the same battery capacity, 3200 mAh. Both also come with microSD card slots, but the Note 3's camera is rated at 13 megapixels to the Max's 8. The Max has no NFC while the Note 3 does, and band support limits the Max to Boost Mobile or Sprint's network here in the US, while the Note 3 is available in several flavors globally. But arguably the largest difference between these two handsets are what make them so large in the first place: the displays. Little needs to be said about how vibrant, sharp, and gorgeous the 1080p Super AMOLED panel on the Note 3 is. It's fantastic, but the 720p LCD on the Boost Max is a totally different story. At first glance and at a distance, it doesn't look so bad, but upon further inspection we quickly noticed pixelation around the edges of icons and text, light bleeding issues, narrow viewing angles, and the temperature of the display. For what it's worth, the Boost Max is built exceptionally well when you consider the price. But after just a few minutes with it in your hands, the amount of sacrifices made to create this device are quite clear, and it should come as no surprise that the Note 3 has much more to offer, for over double the price. On the software side, both ship with Jelly Bean. However, the Note 3 is running version 4.3 and the Max ships with 4.1. The Samsung device of course comes with TouchWiz, meaning it's packed to the brim with both useful and some not so useful features. All of the things you may never use, such as Smart Scroll, Smart Rotate, and Air Gesture, are there for better or worse. But features like multi-window and Air Command for the S Pen are what truly set the Note experience apart. We've said it time and time again. A phone of this size is understandably more beneficial if it has the software support to make use of the additional real estate. Fortunately, ZTE has stepped up to the challenge with SmartView, which is very much like multi-window except any application works within SmartView, and it has a few tricks up its sleeve to boot, such as a Windows-specific mute key and the ability to toggle orientation separately for each window. Outside that, the Boost Max appears to be running a mostly stock version of Android. The home screen and application drawer look mostly untouched. The exceptions are the custom icons or ZTE-specific apps, alarm clock, calculator, etc., the toggles in the notification shade, and the recent apps menu, which is accessed through long pressing the home key. It also features ZTE's lock screen, which we're still not quite fond of. The Boost Max does come with its fair share of bloat too, like Boost's own music store, Boost Zone, and a handful of other pre-installed apps, most of which can actually be uninstalled. Performance is where buying a $299 smartphone can really make a difference. The Galaxy Note 3 is notorious for posting stellar numbers and benchmarks and slicing through just about everything you can throw at it with utter ease. The Snapdragon 400 found in the Boost Max, while far from the worst SoC ever, isn't geared towards power users or heavy gamers. While the Snapdragon 400 manages to power the Boost Max through games like Asphalt 8 just fine, the differences in the level of performance are visible, both inside and out of synthetic benchmark tests. Applications take more time to load on the Boost Max and have to fully load more often due to only having 1GB of RAM, whereas the Note 3 has 3GB. And the more you throw at the Boost Max, the more sluggish it gets. However, we noticed that this particular phone is more sluggish than other Snapdragon 400 powered handsets we've used, and that's quite unfortunate. Samsung's Note 3, of course, is still just as snappy as it was months ago. We haven't quite had the Boost Max long enough to fully test its battery performance, but we can say this. In our testing so far, it seems to be draining slower than the Galaxy Note 3, which would make sense considering they both come with 3200 mAh batteries, and the Max is only powering a 720p display with a Snapdragon 400. Stay tuned for a full look at the Boost Max's battery life in the full review. We also can't really compare network performance since our Note 3 is on Verizon and it's available on all major US carriers, while the Max is limited to Boost Mobile. This sort of comparison would vary from street to street across the US. The Boost Max has a large grille for its rear speaker. It's powered by Dolby Digital Plus sound, which you can activate through a preloaded application. Basically, it works like an equalizer, which you can customize to your liking. The Max's rear speaker provides a fair amount of volume, but the sound is muddy and nothing terribly amazing. The Galaxy Note 3 speakers seem to be comparable in volume, but creates a much sharper sound. Finally, image sensing. This is a slightly redeeming area for the Boost Max in some ways, but the quality of its image sensing doesn't fare well against the Note 3. The pictures taken with the Boost Max aren't always bad. They're relatively sharp and the auto mode works pretty well, but some photos err heavily on the cool side, often making them look nowhere near true to life. The Note 3 with its 13 megapixel camera is capable of taking sharper images, and its auto mode seemed to offer more realistic colors, more contrast, and a better overall experience in more situations. Obviously, the Galaxy Note 3 is a far superior phone. Its price tag, build quality specs, and the name brand told all of us that before the Boost Max even arrived. And even with its price tag, it's a better value than the Boost Max, simply because the experience it offers is so much better. But that doesn't mean the Boost Max is a bad phone, or even a bad deal. It's simply targeting a far smaller demographic, those who want a balance between a smartphone and a tablet and really don't want to spend a lot of money at all. When you're looking to only spend $300 on a no-contract smartphone, you have to manage your expectations. If you do, you'll see the Boost Max really isn't all that bad. It's a far cry from the Galaxy Note 3 and the like, and it isn't quite the Note 3's Moto G since the performance is so spotty, but for the price, it's easily one of the best bargains in the prepaid ring. Folks, that's going to wrap up this week. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to click the thumbs up button below and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all the most current videos, as well as more Boost Max coverage over the next week. You can find us on your favorite social channel, Twitter, Facebook, and Google Plus at Pocket Now. I'm Taylor Martin. You can find me on Twitter at CasperTech, and I will see you next time.